Some of this world's self-appointed intellectuals have just proven their inadequacy in their intellect by supporting diametrically opposed notions of rebuilding trust, whilst at the same time containing the conversation space by limiting the free market of ideas, by taking away freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of open discourse, by trying to put a red towel over that. They think they can rebuild trust. No, they have just proven the deficiency of their thinking and the lack of their intellect by making such suppositions, which proves that power and intellect do not necessarily go together. There are other things, though, that go with power, and I'm going to show you that here in a moment. But my friends, freedom of speech is fundamental to a system in which people can govern themselves, in which people can have freedoms at all, in which people can actually have social justice, because they try to teach now and put out these ideas that freedom of speech is opening the attack on social justice and many other things. No. Freedom of speech, the free market, in the free market space of ideas, the truth will eventually come out, especially if you can have open discourse. And what we really need maybe is to set up debating societies once again. Let people with different ideas sit down and have open discussions, as long as they're respectful, not condescending of each other, and not, giving a name calling. If people can just sit down and talk through their ideas, because at the core, people mostly, sociopaths and psychopaths aside, want the same thing. And those are all over the world, but most people in this world want to be able to have a better life, to be able to live a normal life, maybe raise kids, or just go out and enjoy their lives, have their jobs or whatever they can do to achieve some level of economic prosperity. But key to this is freedom to act, freedom to choose. And you can't have any of that if you don't have freedom of speech, because if you don't have freedom of speech, these people that rise in power, who tend to often look after their own needs and desires of control and such things, they choose to limit what people can say if they can. Even in our own United States of America, one of the greatest experiments in freedoms of speech, or Bill of Rights, even when the very second president of the United States came into power, he put forth this Sedition Act, which limited freedom of speech. Oh, yeah. So these are, President Adams. These pressures are there. That was contested and fought very much by the next president of the United States, who took over from him, Thomas Jefferson, who actually penned our Declaration of Independence, and who was succeeded, of course, by President Madison, who actually he was kind of the editor of the Bill of Rights. So it's always a contest in the world between those who would like to control information and those who like the free marketplace of ideas. But in the free marketplace of ideas, the truth should work its way up. Now, you have to recognize when you're talking to other people that everybody comes forth from a different worldview. And there's some very diametrically opposed worldviews out there in the world today. You don't communicate to them. You don't reach through to them by hitting them over the head with a hammer. It's by getting to them and recognizing at the core, sociopaths and psychopaths aside, that they are all pretty much the same and want the same things. This was a lesson taught by Barbara Marx Hubbard, the daughter of the Marx Toy Company, who talked about synergism and just getting people in a room, and they would come. She could get them through her workshops to come to common goals. She was very much active in the World Future Society and other things like that in the past, and she was able to show that this was the case. Now, my friends, I'm going to show you some examples here, and we're going to talk about some solutions toward the end. But the thing is that if some people are about social justice, well, bear in mind, when a group does rise to the top in an environment where they're controlling information, power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. You're going to wind up with a small clique that's really controlling things. That's just the way things evolve in all societies. It doesn't matter how they start out. But once you allow that to begin, you're going to have some group controlling things. And in such societies, minorities tend to lose out. Somebody is going to get marginalized and pushed to the side one way or the other. Now, you you may think going into it, well, we're this and we set this up, and because we're pushing this, our side is going to come out ahead. It don't work that way. Never has, never will, because it's just not the way human nature works. And any laws or rules that don't account for human nature are fundamentally bankrupt. So that's why the founding fathers of the United States created a system that protected and cherished freedom and really tried very hard to limit the powers of those in government and places that would choose to try to override it. Oh, yeah, but now we have our public-private partnerships, which might be outside of the normal governance, our stakeholder capitalism, which might, be able to say, oh, well, we don't want all this. It might offend our advertisers or something else. There's nothing you can say that won't offend somebody unless we come to a common place, a common thread of ideas, which, could be done through such debates. But I'm going to walk you through some of this, guys. Some of the things being said, some of the things that they're trying to push today won't work. They're fundamentally bankrupt in terms of building trust. Now, they might work for the purposes of some of these organizations if they can institute it for a time. Oh, yeah, the control of information. Yeah, we have societies where information is greatly controlled, like North Korea, the Chinese Communist Party. And of course, some people the ilk that want to control information, they admire that. They openly have even said so in world stages. So let's walk into this and see what's going on, because I believe in freedom. I cherish freedom. I think freedom is the most fundamentally important thing that we have in our world today. The founding fathers of the United States, love them or hate them, some of you guys fall on either side, they did recognize that because they lived under a reprehensive system of a royalty class, a king, who could dictate things and choose what was be legal to be said, what, the flow of information. And anytime you do that, you're putting somebody under the boot. So let's have a look at this. There's, it doesn't matter who's running it, how it starts out, what the good intentions are. Power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, as said by Lord Acton. So here we are, guys. We had this recent convention of so-called minds, some of the world's greatest intellectuals, meeting just this past week, last week, not this week. And their theme was rebuilding trust. Rebuilding trust. Of course, they said amid uncertainty. But these self-same people came out with their doublespeak and told us that the clear and present danger was disinformation. Well, disinformation will ferret itself out in a free market of ideas in time if you let it, if you really allow a free and open discussion. But these guys want to control the discussion, so it seems. How? Why? Because they're the technocrats. They're the smart ones. Yeah, well, they've already committed a logic error just in their supposition they can rebuild trust and control information. But look at this. Here we are on the precipice of World War. Maybe, I think we're already in World War. It could go very kinetic, worse than it is. There's a lot of potential for this to escalate over the next several years. Yet they, in their esteemed high level of intellect, have determined that the number one problem facing the world, the number one global risk today, at least over the next 2 years, because they think they'll have control in 2 years, apparently, maybe, is that what they're thinking? Was it just 2 years? I don't know. But they think it is misinformation and disinformation. This is what they briefed. This is what they taught at their little powwow they just had up in the Swiss mountains. Yikes in Davos. So, Global Elite claims government disinformation and censorship will ensure that people get the facts right. Oh, yeah, they're going to give you the facts. You're not smart enough to know the facts. They're going to give you the facts, so you got nothing to worry about. Don't worry your pretty little heads. They will make all these decisions for you and give you the facts because they have been so good at it. Oh, yeah, so good at it. Like this, like a certain laptop, information about it was Russian disinformation. How do we know? Because 50 top-level senior intelligence officers signed a letter and said so. Oh, yeah, 50 top-level intelligence officers told us absolutely, beyond a shadow of a doubt, we know for a fact that this story here was Russian disinformation. Oh, well, okay, I guess they got it right, except 4 years later, oh my gosh, they had to admit that what they call misinformation was in fact real. Wow. Oh, geez. How did that happen? And you know what? If they had been really in control of information the way they'd like to, would this admission have ever come out? And I just got to ask you, would we have ever seen the Department of Justice have to admit it's real? You know, back here they were ballyhooing and yelling about it. Oh no, blah blah blah. And what happened? Lots of people on social media got stomped just for talking about it. Stomped heavy. Accounts were shut down. People were scooted out. And then, what? Oh yeah, so much so that Congress held a hearing on it about social media's control of this information. And at this time, Twitter was Twitter, not X, and Elon hadn't bought it. But they did a review of Twitter's role in suppressing information on this topic, this very sensitive topic, which, may have thrown an election. Oh, yeah, maybe, possibly, back in a previous election cycle. But I don't know. Who am I? I'm just some poor dumb rocket scientist. So what do I know? Anyway, guys, so the media and politicians keep trying to censor things that turn out to be true. Yeah, there's many other examples at which this seems to have been the case, according to some sources. I'm using qualifiers here because I'm on such a platform where there is no freedom of speech, by the way, and they're getting even more sensitive about what you say. And in fact, it's no longer just about misinformation and disinformation. Now it's about sensitivity. We can't do anything that might upset somebody's sensitivity. Like tell them that the truth is the truth and that freedom of speech matters. Yeah, I'm on dangerous thin ice here. I'm just bringing you the fact that freedom matters. Anyway, look at this. This is the Australian e-safety commissioner, Julia Inman Grant, talking to this group. And I think this was actually 2 years ago. So see, they've been on this road for a little while. They didn't just get on this road a couple weeks back. They've been there. I mean, listen to this.
Ourselves in a place where we have increasing.
Hang on, I don't know if y'all can hear that because I know that my speakers are behind the my mic. Speakers back there, the mic's up here. Sorry about that. It's just the way it is. So
Polarization everywhere, and everything feels binary when it doesn't need to be. So I think we're going to have to think about a recalibration of a whole range of human rights that are planned.
Recalibration of a whole range of human rights. We're going to have to think about a recalibration of a whole range of human rights. What gives her the power? What gives her the right to take away inalienable rights? Because they don't consider them rights. They consider everything a privilege granted to you by Uncle Sugar, or better yet, by them, because they're the ones in charge of the world. They're the masters of the universe.
Out online, from freedom of speech to the freedom to, to be free from online violence.
Freedom of speech. Well, online violence is terrible. Violence is always terrible, and I do not condone it in any shape, form, or fashion, nor do I condone hate or racism. But still, freedom of speech matters. And, it might be important for people to tell you what's on their mind. At least then you know who they are. You know from whence they proceed. And, just because you hear trash don't mean you got to believe it or accept it. That's why we need to educate our kids to think for themselves and get this free market of ideas going in discussion space. I'm not going to play any more of her. But, this is the kind of stuff they're putting out there. But she is the e-safety commissioner of Australia, was. Anyway, so, we need to think about what our founding fathers were thinking about this. And the view of Madison, who penned the Bill of Rights, a free republic depends ultimately on the public's opinion. A constitution could divide power this way and that, but it says in the end, it's the people and only the people who rule, or at least it should be. That's the way they tried to set it up. And for other people to rule wisely, they have to be able to communicate with each other freely without fear or reprisal. If you're afraid to say something, you're just not going to say it, perhaps. And that's where we're going real fast today. And that limits options. Now, if you're Xi Jinping and you've purged everybody underneath you who've said that your nose is ugly or something like that, then when real problems arise, people aren't going to tell you. They may be like Humpty Dumpty set up for a big fall. That may be part of the saving grace in the end for those that cherish freedom. But anyway, but it may be a hard ride to get there. Dictatorships tend to endure all too long. And we see how long the Soviet system lasted in Russia. But it did come down. The people got sick of it. Everybody's always trying to move away from societies like that. They're trying to get away from why? Because people want freedom. People cherish freedom, economic and political. All right, thus freedom of speech and press were not for Madison merely God-given rights. They were preconditions for self-government. And it also says that he believed that here's what's key. Here's what Madison believed. Those who sought to restrict speech revealed themselves to be the opponents of republicanism. That's a true representative government. The reason that they weren't promoting democracies was because everybody votes themselves out of the largesse of the pot, and democracies go bankrupt in a generation. They become mob rule. So they tried to set up a system with lots of checks and balances, and it seemed to work for a while until the bureaucracies got so big and so deep that they got disproportionate power. And then corruption sets in, and the elected folks in the courts kind of, money passes around, and they all get all happy with each other. Anyway, they wish to prevent public opinion from coherent, those that would control, is what he said, thus making it easier to counterfeit. Oh, yeah, you can change information. So who becomes the purveyors of disinformation? Those who want to maintain their power and control, their position in life, which is usually those that are at the top. Now, who just met in Davos? It wasn't the guys at the bottom, now was it? Anyway, so he strongly opposed, as Thomas Jefferson did, the Alien and Sedition Act of 1798, which was about government officers, that basically in that act, you couldn't criticize the president. Oh, yeah. Don't we all criticize whoever's president these days? Imagine if you would go to jail for criticizing the president. Well, we may be heading back in that direction if we're not careful from those who want to limit what we get to say. Or maybe you can criticize one president, but not another. Look, when the federal government really goes in and tries to sweep certain story under the rug, so much so that 50 former intelligence officers come out and sign a letter. But when it's on the other side, they go and try to seemingly create things to go after them, seemingly, according to some. Anyway, but whether that's true or not, that's the perception, and therein lies lack of trust, you see. But by clamping down on information, you don't create more trust. That's kind of like, saying, you know what, I'm going to get you to love me by pointing the barrel of a firearm at you that, I will get you to love me. I will command you to love me. You will love me. I will command love at the point of a gun. Yeah, that don't work. Well, building trust by clamping down on people's freedom to talk, that don't work either. But no, what can I say? This comes from the most intellectual people in the world. Who am I? Just some poor dumb rocket scientist, right? Anyway, yeah. So this Alien and Sedition Act, occurred during the French Revolution. There was people scared that the United States would get drawn into that revolution because the United States had actually been supported by the royalty to get started. And now there was a democratic, supposedly, movement afoot, and it probably was more democratic than republicanism in France. And so there were people on either side of this, and there was a lot of consternation in the country over it. So the Sedition Act specifically outlawed conspiracies to oppose any measure or measures of the government that also outlawed publishing of any false, scandalous, and malicious writings against the Congress or the president. Well, now, who was to determine what was false? Who was to determine what was scandalous? Of course, the president and that Congress. So they got to self-govern without any checks and determine whether they could be criticized or not. Yeah, that was vehemently opposed by our dear friend Thomas Jefferson, and of course James Madison. So, anywho, guys, and Jefferson had this to say. He once wrote this, and I think this is a great quote here. Our liberty depends on the freedom of the press and cannot be limited without being lost. Wow, we got a whole chorus of folks, some of the most powerful people in the world, lots of them, who seem to be dedicated to the proposition, seem to be, from what we heard being said and emphasized at the recent little convene of folks up in Davos, and limiting that very thing, freedom of speech, freedom of press. And we see it in social media to this day, big time. Anyway, so freedom of conscience is an unenable right. Freedom of speech makes representatives accountable to we the people. Yes, the government. If you don't have freedom of speech and freedom of press, how do you make those that are supposed to govern you accountable for what they do? Oh, you don't have to do that. They're all great people. You know, they, especially now that they're not all going to be in government with a stakeholder capitalism. Oh, yeah, you can have people that are unelected totally determine the outcome of your life and every little fine detail of it. Oh, yeah, you will own nothing. You'll have no privacy, and you'll be happy, according to some of those folks. They actually posted that on their website for a while until it created a little mistrust, and they took it down because they're trying to build trust, remember? But then again, there's this whole thing about disinformation and misinformation they think is more important than nuclear war. Anyway, free speech is necessary for the discovery and spread of political truth. Amen. Now, look, you're going to have different camps that have different beliefs. That's okay. Talk about it. Talk about it. Talk about it. Talk about it. Free speech allows public discussion necessary for democratic self-government. Now, see, these are all very true. This came basically from Jefferson, and it was there's this little thing here where this is quoted, a free speech transcript by Jerry Rosen. And this is on the constitutioncenter.org. Constitutioncenter.org, if you want to look this up. From Jefferson to Brandeis, however you say that. The First Amendment, the Declaration, and the Constitution. You might want to check that out. Anyway, folks. But now here's what you got to bear in mind. Here's the problem in organizations that have lots of powerful people in them. Psychopaths are so good at getting ahead. Oh, yeah. They rise to the top. They rise the psychopath and sociopath to political power. This is asking about Trump and Johnson. Well, it's just true across. This is a little bit from the left side of the house, but this is true in general of organizations, be they government or private, that people that have these tendencies tend to rise to the top. They float like something else that floats, right? None of it smells any good to some of us. But anyway, but these guys aren't really that powerful. What am I talking about? Look, they got the most powerful organizations on earth, the government, through associations, through all these companies. I mean, if you come in here and look at their partnership, you go here and look at go in here and look at their partners. Go to the bottom of their page and scroll down and you find this. And then you get this list and you can click on it and letters. It's just the numbers in here are incredible. This is who are their partners. These are the people that participate in and fund this stuff. And so a lot of these people have bought in to these philosophies. Why? Well, they're at the top. Who floats to the top? I don't know. It's just something we need to watch out for. This is the reason we need free speech. It's just so we hold in check any tendency that might arise to the top in these organizations to try to govern us and not be held accountable. That's the whole purpose of freedom of speech, because Lord Acton wrote to Bishop Creighton And he said, the reason that we need same moral standards apply to all men, political and religious, included in he said this was especially since power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, there may be a few exceptions, but this is just all too true, all too prevalent. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Now, he said tends to corrupt in all actuality, but that tendency is all too pervasive that we have seen. So, guys, that kind of underscores this little article here. Unelected sociopaths might be taken down by the most unlikely demographic. Now, these guys are the technocrats, the technological brilliant people of the planet. They're proposing technological solutions to set up their system of governance. The only problem, this editorial points out, is that the minions, the people that program computers and a lot of the software, tend to be more of the anarchist rebellion sort. They might not go along with it. So the very people they need to set up their system might be somewhat less than absolutely thrilled by it. And then again, even more so, my humble opinion, like I always tell you guys, there's more of us than there is of them. And people are waking up around the world. Now, there is a lot of nutty, fruity ideas out there that fit within disinformation and misinformation. But for Pete's sake, put them out and talk about them. Get the open marketplace of ideas discussing this stuff, and then let the truth float to the top. That's what we hope to see. Guys, now I do care a lot about liberty. I had freedom. I have done a number of videos talking about freedom matters, freedom rocks. Started the Freedom Restoration Foundation. Check out freedomrestorationfoundation.org and click on the Action Center. Scroll to the bottom and tell you how to contact your representatives in state governments and how to contact your Congress critters. And I think that's a good terminology for them. Bill of Rights Day, Freedom Restoration, more than that, 4th of July, Muslim freedom, tribute to veterans, freedom at risk alert. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in here about freedom, guys. Poor Canadian truckers. Oh my gosh. Some societies it's tough to push the idea of freedom. Freedom matters. That's one of the best ones, right? Freedom matters. Freedom rocks. And then I got some I've done on independence. And even food independence, 4th of July. Why America is great. Now, there's a story you need to tell the youngsters that think we're so terrible. I did another now that was from the woods behind my house. I did a similar pro-America video from the desert. Is that? No, that's from back here too. That's not in the desert. America. So I've done several videos along these lines, guys. So check them out. You need to look at this stuff and think about it, and think about why freedom matters to you, why the freedom of speech matters to you, and make sure your Congress critters know that we don't want to limit that, and make sure that, when we spend our dollars, we're voting. You buy the goods and services of those that want to tell you how to think again. Just a little summary here of the founding fathers. I do note that James Madison, of course, James Madison was from Virginia, as was Thomas Jefferson. There were Southerners. And John Adams was from Massachusetts. Now, James Adams, even though he came up with that Sedition Act, he actually died on the 50th anniversary of the United States, the same day that Thomas Jefferson died. Even though they'd been somewhat opposed, they both at least believed in America on some level, and managed to hang on by the skin of their teeth to the 50th anniversary of the United States, just to see that it lasted that long. And it did, but not without great trial and tribulation, and much more trial and tribulation was to come, as trial and tribulation is coming in our day and age here and now. But the exercise of taking the freedom of speech is not going to work. Alexander Hamilton, he was one of the other founding fathers that was north of New York. This is a guy founded the banking system. It took a Southern president and Andrew Jackson to take down that central bank. Everything Andrew Jackson did was not good. He did some very heinous things, in my humble opinion, with the evacuation of the American Indians. but that's another story. You might want to check out Proverbs 24 while you're at it. I don't know. Anyway, folks, there we go. Stop the share. So there you go. Freedom matters. Freedom of speech is fundamental. It's fundamental and should not be abridged, as other things should not be abridged. You know, like that other amendment that a lot of us hold and dearly, which, you know, Thomas Jefferson also spoke about that. So he was a big advocate of freedom, as was James Madison, which is kind of ironic considering they owned slaves. Why was the Southerners who owned slaves more advocates of freedom? Maybe because they were beginning to see the flaws in the system that they were over at the time. Maybe they saw that. You know, there's some hints to that. It didn't take them a long time to get around to it. Some freedoms have to be recognized fully. It takes generations. Slavery is reprehensible. But who is it today that's promoting the trafficking of people coming across our border? What is that? Why is our borders not closed? Do we not have slavery today? Yeah, in many ways we do. And that's sad. Freedom matters. All people should be free of every race, color, creed. And I tell you guys this, and I emphasize again, you're going to find good people in every nation on earth, every state, city, hamlet, shire of every race, color, creed, and religion. Once again, down inside, most people, sociopaths and psychopaths aside again, who are the people that tend to float up, according to many articles and a lot of research. I don't come up with this stuff. I don't invent this stuff. But see, that's why we need to have checks and balances to hold those at top accountable. And the number one, the one that they want to take from us is freedom of speech. Why would they want to do that? Maybe they don't want to be held accountable. You think, but how is it that these great intellects come up with this intellectually vacant idea that they can rebuild trust while muzzling people? Yeah, right. Shows the vacancy in their intellect. And you can take that to the bank. Not to Hamilton's bank, though. Anyway, my friends, thank you for watching. Oh, yeah, talking about banks and central control. I am not a big fan of it. So check out defythegrid.com, where you can buy gold backs, which might be the answer to central bank digital currencies and a lot of other stuff out there. And it give you some potential power to maintain the value of what you own, at least monetarily. But you know, I'm no financial advisor by any shape, form, or fashion. Just check it out, defythegrid.com. If you use the code GreenGregs, you get 1% off. So there's the deal. Thank you for watching. Greg out.